Morning, friends. Good morning, sisters and brothers. Good morning, church. Good to be with you this morning. Hi, I'm Brian. I'm the pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church. Love that. Love that. Now, for me, it's Tuesday morning. I just finished the Tuesday morning video for you, but for you, this is Wednesday morning. I'm recording it because I can't be with you live. So you don't have to worry. This is actually Memorex, but it'll still be live for you Wednesday at 9. And this is another episode of PB Reads the Bible, and it's day 26 of our journey through the book of Genesis. And today we are going to be taking a look at chapter 37. It's day 26, but we're on 37 because we were able to do a couple chapters at a time, a number of times over this last month or 5 weeks, whatever it's been. And we're moving on. We're into chapter 37, excuse me, which is good. We're now getting into Joseph's part of the story. To Joseph's part of the story. Now, a couple things I want to mention before we begin Joseph's story. I'm going to be stopping a lot in this chapter in particular. Okay, I'm going to stop a lot in this chapter in particular to hopefully help you understand some things that you might have missed or might have been mistaught to you over the years. Okay, first thing I'd ask you to do, though, as well, is to try to approach this story as if for the first time. And if it is for your first time, that's awesome. You don't have to forget anything. But some of you may have read this story numerous times, may have heard this story numerous times, may have seen the Broadway play or movie of the musical, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat and all that. So I'm going to ask you to forget all that stuff. Okay, I'm going to ask you to forget all that stuff because we need to start this one fresh. Okay, now that I've said that, we're gonna start. And like I said, I'm probably gonna stop a lot to go through this. It's not a super long chapter, it's a decent length chapter, and I have to remember I've only got a half an hour for recordings. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. He's been moving around a lot. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Pause. So remember, Joseph is one of the youngest of Jacob's sons, right? But he's the eldest of the two from Rachel. So from his favorite wife, so he has a special attachment both to Joseph and to Benjamin, probably because of his love for Rachel. She was his favorite wife. Joseph is Joseph is actually working for his half brothers, the ones that were born from Bilhah and Zilpah, concubines, servants, no, secondary wives. Okay, so Dan and Naphtali and Gad and Asher, those four are in charge of the flocks that Jacob is helping to tend. Now, the New Living Translation says that he reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. It's probably not the best translation, okay? Most translations, they're adding a little bit to it, and when they do that, they might be changing the meaning in this particular case. Most translations say that he gave bad reports about them. In Hebrew, it's a little bit vague. Yes, it could be read that he is saying bad things about his brothers, But in Hebrew, it could be the reports themselves that are bad. In other words, he's lying to his father about his brothers. He's telling his father that his brothers are doing bad things when they're not. And he's not respecting them as his brothers and as his elder brothers, which he should, because perhaps they were born from secondary wives. And there shouldn't be any difference, but he's treating them differently. Okay. Would he do the same thing for one of his more direct siblings, one of Leah's sons? Maybe, maybe. But so in Hebrew, it's very likely that the author is showing that he's a liar, that he's following along in his father's footsteps with deception, and well, we're going to find out that he's lazy, and so he's telling stories about his brothers that most likely aren't true. Okay, Jacob, Israel, loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. Pause. Pause. Um, Probably not a good translation. Probably not a good translation. Now, some of your translations you might read, the oldest translations like King James and Revised Standard, they say coat of many colors, right? Coat of many colors, which doesn't have a whole lot of meaning for us, and that's where that idea of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor dream coat comes from, right? So we just think, oh, it's a colorful thing. No, that's not what it's talking about. Now the NIV translates it as richly ornamented, richly ornamented, which is a little bit better than beautiful or multicolored. The NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, translates it as robe with long sleeves, which is probably closer to the meaning. I forget the Hebrew. The Hebrew word is not coming to my mind right at this moment. Padash something. It's not. It's not quite there. It's somewhere in here, and it's not coming here. However, it's one of those cases. I mentioned this a few weeks ago or last week, whatever it was. I mentioned that when we're translating words, the number of times a word is used, if a word is used a whole bunch of times, it becomes easier to translate it because of context. And we can get a better definition of a word when it's used a whole bunch of times. The fewer times a word is used, the harder it becomes to get a really good translation of it. And what happens when a word is only used once? You really have to guess. That's the case here. The Hebrew word, is used once in the entire Bible, in the entire Hebrew Bible, the entire Old Testament. It's used once here. That's it. That's it. It's in the story about Joseph that this robe is described. That's it. And so for years and years and years, for centuries, that's all we had to go on. That's all the Bible experts, that's all the translators had to go on because they couldn't even find it in other documents. Finally, they did find it in other documents. For what purpose? In describing a wedding. It was the best translation we now can come up with, basically, is a bridal gown. A bridal gown. Here's the point to it. And a bridal gown would have very long sleeves. So rather than picturing something with a whole lot of colors, think of something very long, all the way down to the ground, perhaps even with a train behind it, richly ornamented, such as the NIV says, so all kind of glitter and sparkles and gold stuff and other things on it, with long sleeves, as the NRSV translates it. In fact, many other A more specific description is to the middle of the palms, to the middle of the palms. The point is, it's not something you can really do any work in. It's a very special robe that you would only wear for very special occasions. But Joseph wears it like all the time. That's why his brothers get upset about it too. That's why Joseph's brothers get upset about it. So hopefully I had to pause the video, so hopefully this works when I'm done, I hope. Anyway, so keep that in mind, that it's, very long sleeves, very long body. You really can't do any work in it. And he likes to wear it. He likes to wear it. That's important. This comes along. All right. His brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Listen, I've had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers. But his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that? He asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Pause. Joseph has a dream about, the sun and the moon. So the sun would be the father and the moon would be the mother. And notice it's only one moon. And Jacob even only says your mother. Well, his mother is Rachel is dead. So he's really got 3 mothers left. But they both only say one, which would be Leah. So there's a little bit wrong stuff being expressed in that. Because the other 2 secondary wives should have been considered just as important. Continuing, soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them. Well, I'm ready to go, Joseph replied. Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along. Then come back and bring me a report. So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. Now, pause. It sort of comes out in English, but in Hebrew, it's a little bit stronger, a little bit more obvious that although Jacob tells them, get ready and go. Joseph said, I'm ready to go. Well, he's in English, that's how it comes out. And then Jacob has to say, go. Like he has to be extra specific with this son. The author is actually getting started and telling us he's not that smart. He's not that smart, and he's not that obedient. He's not that obedient to his father. If his father tells him, get ready and go. Well, I'm ready. Well, go. Go already. So he travels to where his brothers are supposed to be, right? He travels to where his brothers are supposed to be. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. What are you looking for? He asked. I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph replied. Do you know where they are pasturing the sheep? Yes, the man told him. They have moved on from here, but I heard them say, let's go on to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Pause. So the English translation there says that this man found him wandering around the countryside, right? We don't quite get it in English. In Hebrew, the author is really pointing out that Jacob is definitely not the brightest bulb. He's not just wandering around looking at the countryside. He's kind of like wandering around looking at the ground. Because it's more of a do 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 do. I'm going to the park today. Well, I will lug him and squeeze him and call him George. He's not smart. He's literally looking at the countryside, looking at the ground, looking for his brothers. So the author's showing he's not very smart. He's not very smart. So far, he's been pointing out, he lies, he's kind of lazy, he's disobedient, and now he's not very smart. Not very smart. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. Let's not kill him, he said. Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him. Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. Pause. So Reuben's trying to do good. Maybe he's trying to make up for the wrong that he did in the other chapter. Right? So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Pause. Just go back up like 10 verses, right? Joseph tells him, get ready. I'm sorry, Jacob tells him, get ready and go to the fields and find your brothers. And he says, I'm ready. He's wearing this robe with these long sleeves and gold or decorations and long bottoms. He can't do any work, but he's wearing this thing. No wonder his brothers hated him, right? So they rip it off of him. They rip it off of him. Probably, at least in part, they hate the symbolism of this robe. They hate the symbolism of the robe. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, Judah, interesting. He's number 4, and eventually he's the one that's become so popular and so important, but here he seems to be a trickster or doing something wrong, right? What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. Pause. I think they changed that a little bit in this translation. Most of the translations, yeah. Yeah, see, they changed it. They say Ishmaelites who were Midianite traders. They're trying to explain something. They're trying to compensate, actually, for something with this passage, because most use those two terms. Like it says Ishmaelites, then it says Midianites, then it goes back to Ishmaelites, or vice versa. It might go Midianites, Ishmaelites, Midianites. There weren't two different groups of traders in the story. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But so they're trying to correct something that's incorrect in their eyes when they made that part of this translation. Let's think of it as two different stories coming together, and the author intentionally not clarifying things. Okay, that's pretty simple. All right. and they took him down to Egypt. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. Apparently, he wasn't there when they sold him. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" He's realizing that he was the eldest. He's supposed to be responsible. Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in its blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message: "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Not our brother, your son. Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son. I will go down to Sheol, mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. End of chapter 37. So, this is the beginning of the importance of Joseph. Even though he's like next to last of the 12, he's now taking center stage basically for the remainder of the book of Genesis, or near center stage, with a couple interruptions. Like the next chapter, Judah takes center stage next chapter, and a couple other places along the way. So we'll see a little bit clearer why Judah becomes so important later on. But for now, and Joseph is, and we're learning some things about him. Hopefully, this helps you to understand a little bit better uh, what Joseph was really like. Let's not say that he was this wonderful person. He lied. So he was a deceiver. He was a liar. He's lazy. He's disobedient, and he's not very bright. Not very bright. The author's putting all that stuff out there. Oh, and he's also quite egotistical. All right, friends. Well, that's going to be it for today, for Wednesday. Tomorrow, we're back live. We're back live on Thursday, and then Friday again, a recording. All right. So I hope this has been beneficial. Hope that God has spoken to you in some way today, that you've learned something or relearned something. And as you go about your days, keep your eyes and ears open, and for what God is doing in your life. When you see it, say, "Thanks, God," and then tell somebody about it. Have a blessed day, my friends. Be blessed.